More of the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
4:17 is the time in the Prince Orthopedic Associates studio. Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey, 920 AM in Bucks, Burlington, and Mercer counties, or worldwide on the web at 920thejersey.com. Joe Marino does a fantastic job covering the NFL draft as an analyst for FanRag NFL, and then is also the assistant director of scouting for NDT Scouting. And with the legal tampering period beginning today, and then also the NFL draft starting on April 27th, we thought it'd be a great idea to bring Joe on the show right now. Joe, Zach Gelb, appreciate the time, and how are you?
Hey, Zach, appreciate you having me on. I'm doing well, and it's exciting time of year for us to get into this free agency and NFL draft, so I'm sure we have a lot to get into.
Definitely about that. So let's start with the Eagles first, because there's a lot of buzz with the Eagles to see what they'll do in free agency and then also the draft with having the quarterback in place. Now they got to get talent around Carson Wentz. And one of the names that we've heard thrown into the rumor world the last few days has been Brandon Cooks, the wide receiver from New Orleans. If you're the Eagles, would you give up that 14th overall pick for a player like the level of Brandon Cooks?
So what's interesting about this wide receiver class is it's very deep, but you only have two guys that really project as number one alpha type receivers at the next level. That's Mike Williams from Clemson and Corey Davis at Western Michigan. Now, in all likelihood, I'm not sure you want to gamble with those players being available at 14. So do you go ahead and get a proven talent like a Brandon Cooks, a guy that you know can go ahead and play in the NFL if you wanted to go with wide receiver with that pick, and you go ahead and get your guy? What the Eagles need to decide is if Brandon Cooks is that feature number one wide receiver that they want, and if so, make the deal. If you're planning on going wide receiver and you want to gamble on one of those other two guys being there, well, then that's just a choice they need to make.
Yeah, if I'm the Eagles, I would make the deal at 14, especially showing their draft history with Howie Roseman calling the shots, and I know they're relying heavily on Joe Douglas. And I do also agree, I don't know if Davis or Williams are going to be available at 14, so I think you're gambling. I've always been on the theory with how deep this cornerback class is that they're going to draft a cornerback. So if we look at free agency, and I expect the Eagles to eventually get a wide receiver in the draft at some point, you hear all these names: Alshon Jeffrey, Kenny Stills, Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson, Kenny Britton, Terrell Pryor. Is there a wide receiver that you look at in the free agency period and say, hey, at the right price, that guy probably works in Philly?
Well, I think what you really have to do is evaluate, do you want to play a premium for a guy like Kenny Stills or something like that, or do you want to take a chance on a younger player in the draft, have a lot less tied up in him, and, free up your assets to use them in other places? I lean towards the draft when we look at the wide receiver pool. Now, the unique situation with the Brandon Cooks deal on the table, that's a little bit changes the conversation. But when we're talking about the next tier of wide receivers available, given the Eagles' cap situation, I think they're going to be best served looking to the draft to fill those needs.
Another theory that people are throwing around in the South Jersey, Philadelphia area, and I know he still has to get reinstated, but if you're going to look at free agency and the Eagles only have $11-12 million to spend, maybe they go explore on Josh Gordon. Would you see the Eagles possibly taking a flyer on the troubled wide receiver in Josh Gordon?
I don't. It's one of those things where Bill Belichick says it best: is your best ability is your availability. And Josh Gordon's proved nothing but being unreliable. He's not a player that you can count on. So I don't think that's a headache that's worth it. With a deep wide receiver class available in the draft, I think that's where the Eagles really need to turn their attention to improve the position.
Joe Marino with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. If we see the Eagles taking a cornerback maybe at 14, and we know this is a very deep draft with the corners from all the experts like yourself saying so, give me some names that could be available that could help out the Eagles secondary at 14.
Yeah, there's plenty of options. That's the great thing about it. My mind immediately goes to Sidney Jones out of Washington. I think that'd be a great fit for Jim Schwartz's scheme, where you have a guy with tremendous ball skills. You can leave him on an island and has good mirror ability down the field. He's exciting. Garyon Conley from Ohio State is a good man-to-man cover guy. Adoree Jackson from from USC, he's a guy that's a little bit smaller, but he's a twitched-up athlete, can also help you in the return game, which is probably pretty exciting. And then, look at a guy like Marshawn Lattimore, who's probably the most talented wide receiver or cornerback in this class. And he is He's got some injury concerns. So if he slides a little bit and you take a gamble on on him being healthy, he's probably the best corner in the draft. So the options will be ripe for the picking at 14 for the Eagles.
Whose stock really rose in Indianapolis at the cornerback position this past week?
Yeah, I think Gary Conley's the guy that comes to mind. He tested a whole lot better than I really anticipated him testing. I had some concerns a little bit about his long speed. He answered those questions by running in the low 4.4s. He had really nice jumps, and he looked very fluid. So he's the guy that I thought really stood out, as well as Adoree Jackson, who really just confirmed what I thought about him on tape in terms of foot speed, quickness, and long speed, and good jumps. So those are the two guys that I thought were the best in terms of helping their stock at Indy.
Joe Marino with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Since you brought up the quarterback conversation, let's just chat a little bit about the QBs real quickly. If you had to rank these QBs, I know it's not a quarterback class that a lot of people have confidence with right now compared to other years, but how about these quarterbacks this year in the draft?
Yeah, there's two that I like in the first round. Number one, Mitchell Trubisky out of North Carolina. Obviously, we wish he started more games, right? But he hasn't. But you look at the games that he did start across 13 starts, the traits are really exciting. He has excellent accuracy to all levels of the field, makes good decisions, and he has excellent skills in the pocket. Very exciting talent for me, a guy that I'm comfortable selecting in the top 10. The other guy is Deshaun Watson out of Clemson, who, look, the accuracy is not what you want it to be, and the decision-making is not what you want it to be, but look at everything else, all the intangibles. He's been to the biggest stages that college football has to offer, and he's performed at an elite level. The only quarterback ever to pass for 4,000 yards and rush for 1,000 yards in one season. So he's a very exciting dual threat. Obviously, the intangibles are exciting, and either one of those guys, I think, are the top-tier quarterbacks in this draft that a team should take in the first round, and then everyone else is a cut below in terms of looking at Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Kaiser, those types of guys.
With the Jets at number 6, how do you see the Jets picking number 6 in the draft coming up in April?
Well, the bad news for Jets fans is that there are so many needs. They're in position to just take the best player available. I've done a few mock drafts already this year, and I've given anything from a quarterback to a running back to defensive line. I mean, really, they need everything. They just need to let the board fall to them, maybe trade back. Stockpile some picks in a very deep class. It's hard to pinpoint a specific player because they need so much, and they should just really let the draft come to them and try to stockpile assets.
What quarterback do you think could be available for the Jets at number 6?
Well, I think ultimately, we're going to see Watson and Trubisky go before they're on the clock. So they need to make a decision if a guy like Deshaun Kaiser, or Patrick Mahomes are worth that pick, and I don't think they are. But if they want to reach for a quarterback, those are the types of options I think they're going to have to look into.
I would stay away from quarterback at number 6 if I'm the Jets, but we'll see what Mike Maccagnan does as we're talking to Joe Marino. Another name that's linked to the Jets at number 6 could be Leonard Fournette. 240 pounds, ran an unbelievable 40-yard dash time this past week at Indianapolis. Where do you think the earliest that Leonard Fournette goes in this year's NFL draft?
I think you nailed it right there with the Jets. I think that's kind of his ceiling. And I think the Jets, or any team that's looking to invest in Leonard Fournette, is thinking to themselves, this can be the focal point of my offense. This is my bell cow. This is the guy who I build the system around. And obviously he's an exciting blend of size, speed, and power. Maybe he's not quite the versatile player in terms of receiving ability, and he doesn't have the best vision. But this is a freight train here that you can really, running the football and stopping the run is still a winning formula in the NFL, believe it or not. And he's a guy that can get you by, especially when you don't have any certainty at quarterback and at wide receiver. Go ahead and get the guy that can keep you in games, and you can build around that.
And then when we take a look at another team that plays at MetLife Stadium, the Giants, we know the Giants just got to the postseason, and now you got to get Eli Manning some help. The offensive line's in shambles. They need a running back as well. Giants at 23. When you look at the mock drafts, give me a few names that you could see the Giants targeting.
I get excited about the tight end options for the Giants. Obviously, a home run grand slam is going to be O.J. Howard out of Alabama. I'm not sure he's going to be available, but maybe David Njoku out of Miami, who's an athletic freak. big time guy after the catch, can win at the catch point. He really came on over the last 8 games at Miami. And then you kind of look at guys like maybe a move piece like an Evan Ingram, who ran a great 40-yard dash, had a ton of productivity in the SEC the last 2 seasons. So I think maybe a move piece tight end, an inline guy, those are the types of guys when I think about helping Eli Manning, I think would be the most useful.
Now, I love O.J. Howard. We all know with Alabama, he's a big game player, comes and plays when the 2 games up against Clemson and had really good stats. I kind of agree with you that he probably will go maybe in the top 20 and won't be there at 23. But after seeing what he was able to do this past weekend, how much momentum is really building up on the O.J. Howard train?
Oh gosh, I mean, it really started at the Senior Bowl when he checked in, and at the weigh-ins, he's a chiseled frame, and he just looks the part. And then you see him on the field, and he's a dynamic receiver. He can run great routes. He's smooth. He's athletic, and then on top of that, let's not forget that he's the best blocking tight end in college football. So not only can this guy help you as a receiver, but he's going to create a ton of offense for your team as an inline blocker, a guy that can block in space, lead block, and the Jason Witten type things. I mean, this is a bona fide tight end prospect, and he's certainly ascending throughout the process.
Wrap it up with Joe Marino, who joins us right now from FanRag and also the assistant director of scouting for NDT Scouting. Let's take care of Temple football, because you mentioned a little bit about the Senior Bowl and this combine process. I don't think anyone has done it better and really improved their stock over the last few weeks than Hassan Reddick. And I covered Temple football. You knew Hassan Reddick was going to be a good player a few years ago, but no one could see this potential first-round draft pick developing. With Hassan Reddick, your draft analysis and what you've seen out of him.
Ooh, I get excited about Hassan Reddick. I did an article for FanRag Sports a few weeks ago that dissected his traits. And, it's interesting. To your point, I don't think any player has done more to help their draft stock than Hassan Reddick in terms of what he's done at the Senior Bowl and now at the Combine. The issue with him is, he played defensive end in college, right? He's 230-something pounds, and that's just not going to work in the NFL playing on the edge. But when he got to Mobile and he played off the ball and we saw the fast-to-flow processing skills, the physicality, and just kind of those intangibles, leadership type stuff, he started getting exciting. And then he goes to the Combine, and he validates that athleticism that you saw really at a high level. And then you go back to the tape, and you can see him operating in space, doing very nice things. And you've got yourself either a 4-3 Mike or a 4-3 Will all day long. I get excited about him playing off the ball. I think he can do it. And I think he's going to be a starting interior linebacker for somebody probably in the top 25 picks of this draft.
With Reddick after the Combine, and even like you mentioned, right after the Senior Bowl, a few drafts that I've seen were putting him in the first round, and then you had some that didn't have him in the first round. After the weekend he had, I'd have to imagine he'll be a first-round talent. Earliest Hassan Reddick goes in your estimation?
I've heard that the Detroit Lions are very high on Hassan Reddick, so I think that's probably his floor. In my latest mock draft, I gave him to the Giants, ironically enough. So I think that those would be really nice landing spots there in the 20s for Hassan Reddick.
And then staying with Temple football, Deion Dawkins had a really good week, especially on that 3-cone drill, and has a really fun personality. What are teams saying about Deion Dawkins?
Well, Deion Dawkins, in a class like this at offensive tackles, everybody's looking for the next option. And Deion Dawkins is one of those guys that is kind of in that next tier, but you think maybe you got a chance. You like the movement skills, right? That's what I like when I watch Deion Dawkins on tape, is how well he moves and can slide his feet, shut down gaps. I think he's got a power element to his game that needs to improve. But in terms of him being checking the boxes in terms of being moldable clay that you can work with and turn into a potential starting offensive lineman, I see that, and teams do as well.
He's very versatile, too, because I see some people having him at offensive tackle and then some at offensive guard. How are most of the teams looking at him? I'm hearing more offensive guard, right?
Yeah, offensive guard is where you're seeing him mentioned to play a lot. For me, I get a little concerned because my concern with Deion Dawkins was the power element, and that becomes more important on the inside. So I'm going to give him a chance at tackle before I move him inside, but it seems like the early take is that teams are looking at playing him inside.
Joe, we appreciate it. Thanks so much. Real quickly before we let you run, tell everyone how they could reach you and follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Zach. You guys can keep track of me on Twitter at @TheJoeMarino. A lot of great content about the NFL draft coming all week long, every week throughout the course of the draft process. So thanks for having me on. Appreciate anyone that wants to follow along.
How many more mock drafts do you do before draft night?
Oh, as many as I get assigned. The editors want those babies, and I know the fans do. And it's interesting. You put those things out, and everybody hates you, but everybody wants to read them. So it's a love-hate relationship with these mock drafts, and I'm sure I'll have one out in the next week or so.
We'll be reading it. Thank you, Joe.
Absolutely. Thank you.